game of League of Legends and got distracted and didn't pay attention to the time. So, here we are at 10:27, so we're 27 minutes late, but it's okay. We're here now, and we are reading chapter 20 called Shim. Last chapter, Emerus and Rhea walked across a swamp to try to get to the Grandalusa, which can help them maybe save the Druma from evil. And then they found a honey pot, and then Emerus grabbed somebody's nose in the honey pot. So, what is that about? Let's find out. Okay, chapter 20, Shim. Rhea and I cascaded down the slope. Ahead of us, the weighty log, loaded with honey and whatever had boiled up from its depths, rolled and bounced down the ridge, gathering speed as it descended. Finally, it smashed into a gigantic boulder, splintering into bits. When at last I stopped, the world around me kept spinning for some time. Half dazed, I made myself sit up. Rhea. Over here. She lifted her head from the grass just below me, her brown wisps of hair matted with honey and twigs. Simultaneously, we turned to the moaning sound coming from the wreckage of the trunk. Rhea reached for me, wrapping her forefinger around mine. We stood and carefully crept closer. What we saw was a little mound completely covered with honey, sticks, and leaves, lying beneath a boulder. Then the mound rolled over, shook itself vigorously, and sat up. It's a man! My words were filled with awe. A tiny little man. A dwarf, corrected Rhea. I didn't know there were any dwarfs left in Finchyra. Two pink eyes popped open in the mask of honey. You both is wrong. Totally, horribly, disgustingly wrong. I is no dwarf. Rhea looked quite skeptical. No, then what are you? The little man blew a blast of honey out of his bulbous nose. As more honey dripped off his chin, he licked his fingers, palms, and wrists. Having cleaned his hands, he looked nervously from one side to the other. You isn't a friend of the king's, is you? Rhea scowled. Of course not. And what about your black-haired friend here, who poses on other people's noses? He's not either. Certainly, definitely, absolutely not? Rhea could not keep herself from grinning. Certainly, definitely, absolutely not. All right, then. The little man struggled to unstick himself from the ground so that he could stand. He strode up to Rhea. Although he came only to just above her knee, he threw his head back with pride. I is no dwarf. I is a giant. A what? I exclaimed, starting to laugh. The little man glared at me, pink eyes shining. I is a giant. Then his pride seemed to melt away. His face fell, and his shoulders drooped. I is just a very, very, very small giant. I truly wishes that I could be big, like a giant should be. I don't believe it. I stooped lower to get a better view. You don't look like a giant to me, not even a small one. But I is. Then I'm a fungus. And why is a fungus going around pulsing on other people's noses? Rhea burst out laughing, shaking every leaf on her suit of vine. Leave him alone, Emerus. If he says he's a giant, well then, I believe him. Seemingly vindicated, the tiny fellow patted his bulging belly. I is having a nicely meal, too, bothering nobodies until I was interrupted. My name is Rhea. What's yours? Glancing nervously over his shoulder, he muttered, Can't be too careful these days. He took a tiny step closer. My name is Shim. I observed him suspiciously. And tell us, Shim, do you always go swimming in honey when you drink it? Certainly, definitely, absolutely. If you would like to not get stinged by the bees, that's the best way to do it. Amused, Rhea smiled. You have a point, but getting out again must be difficult. The little giant sputtered. You was making fun of me. Not at all, I teased. You're not funny in the least. I tried my best to hold back my laughter, but it spewed out of me all at once. I roared, clutching my side. The tiny fellow darted up to me and kicked me as hard as he could in the foot. My mirth vanished. With a scowl, I started after him. No, stops! Please, stops! Cried Shim, hiding between Rhea's legs. I doesn't mean to hurt you, really, truly, honestly. You certainly did. I tried to grab hold of the sticky mass behind Rhea. When I catch you, I'll pinch more than your nose. Wait, commanded Rhea. She held me by the shoulder. We don't have time for this. We've dawdled long enough. Reluctantly, I backed away. I suppose you're right. Anyway, those bees will be coming back any second, with their stingers ready for battle. I shot a glance at Shim. If I were you, I'd take a good bath before they descend on you. The pink eyes swelled in fright. On me? Certainly, definitely, absolutely. The little giant gasped. I truly hates to get stinged. With that, he tore off into the swirling mist beyond the boulder. He had only just disappeared, however, when he screamed with terror. Rhea and I both ran to see what had happened. A few seconds later, we too screamed. We fell, spinning head over heels, into a deep pit plunging straight into the ground. Eventually, we rolled to a stop. The world had gone totally dark. Oh, my head, I grumbled. Something wriggled beneath me. Gets you off me, you fool! An arm or a leg, sticky and caked with dirt and leaves, struck me square in the face. Ow! Watch out, you blundering ball of honey! Stop it, cried Rhea. We must find our way out of here. Where is here, anyway? I asked. We must have fallen into a hole, a deep one. So deep I can't even see any light up there. And feel the floor, it's all pokey, not like normal rock. I can answer your question, boomed a thunderous voice from deeper in the darkness. You have found my lair. Whose lair? We all asked at once. A long pause ensued. The lair of the Grandilusa. Okay, so that was a short chapter, so we're going to read chapter 21 as well. Chapter 21 is called The Grandilusa. Okay. The chamber's walls seemed to shake with the force of the voice. Rhea pressed against my side. I tried my hardest to see, but my second sight was useless in such total darkness. For an instant, I considered breaking the promise made at Kaer Mirden and tapping whatever powers I might still possess. To protect us, however, I could. But the very thought rekindled my old fears, and I sat frozen. Is you, whispered Shim into the darkness, the creature who eats his everything? I eat whatever I choose, the deep voice echoed, its vibrations continuing to pummel us. Now tell me who you are before I eat you. Bravely, I cleared my throat. I am called Emerys. Emerys of where? This time my voice was weaker. I don't know. And I am Rhea of Druma Wood. After a silence, the Grandilusa boomed. Who else is here? No answer. Who else is here? So loud came the voice that flakes of dirt shook loose and fell on our heads. No answer. Only a gasping sound that I assumed was the rapid panting of the frightened little giant. He is Shim, answered Rhea, also of the Druma. She drew in a deep breath. Please don't eat us. We need your help. For what? To save the Druma, my home. I added, your home as well. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, all of a sudden, light filled the chamber. We looked at one another, truly amazed. For we found ourselves in an enormous cavern cut from the rock. Although the walls around us fairly glowed, there was no clear source of the light. More mysterious yet, there was no sign at all of the Grandilusa. But for ourselves, the radiant cavern looked empty. Where is she? I scanned the glowing cavern walls. Rhea's brow furrowed. I have no idea. Shim, meanwhile, sat with his face in his hands, shivering. And this light, I reached a hand to the wall. Look, it comes from the rocks themselves. Crystals, said Rhea in wonderment. A cave of glowing crystals. Indeed, the walls, ceiling, and floor of this cave radiated a clear, dancing light. Crystals sparkled and flashed all around us, as if the sunlight shining on a rippling river had been poured into the very earth. And I am quite sure that my own face glowed as well, for even in the days when I could see with my own eyes, when colors ran deeper and light shone brighter, I had never seen anything as beautiful as this crystal cave. Then I felt a sudden surge of warmth against my chest. Peering into the neck of my tunic, I jumped. The Galator was glowing as bright as the walls. Vibrant green light flowed from the pendant's jeweled heart. I looked up to find Rhea watching me, smiling. You like my cave? A new voice, airy and small, floated to us from one of the walls. While Shim continued to shiver with fear, Rhea and I leaned closer to the source. There, amidst the massive curl of crystals, hung a delicate web. Its strands radiated out from the center like the light from a star. Upon this web dangled a single spider, the size of a thumbnail. Its tiny head and back were covered with minuscule hairs, which glowed as white as the crystals themselves. "I like it very much," I replied. "It reminds me of all the stars I have ever seen," said Rhea. I watched the spider, the round hump of her back jiggling as she climbed to a higher strand. "Are you?" "I am," declared the spider, "the Grand Elusa." "But your voice was so much larger before." Ignoring me, the white spider hooked a silken thread to the strand. Throwing a line over a torn section of the web, she leaped down to a lower level. With a quick motion, 2 of her 8 arms tied off the line. Having completed her repair, she scurried back to the center. "How could you have sounded so large?" I asked again. "Oh, I can be as large when I please." The spider waved at Shim. "Large enough to eat that shivering morsel over there with one bite." The little giant, his face still in his hands, gave out a groan. "If I am not in the mood to eat my guests," she continued in her airy little voice, "I make myself smaller for a while. My stomach shrinks, even if my appetite doesn't. Anyway, image and reality are rarely the same. As you surely know by now, Emrys, that is the first rule of magic." I caught my breath. "I know nothing about magic, except that it's dangerous, very dangerous." Then you do know something about magic." "That is all I will ever know." "Too bad. You might have found it useful in the future." "Not me. There is no magic in my future, at least not of my own making." The spider seemed to observe me for a moment. "If you say so." Spying a beetle twice her size who had flown into the web, she rushed over, bit its neck, then waited for it to cease struggling. In a flash, she secured it tightly with a strand of silk. She plucked off one of its legs and started munching. "I do enjoy eating, though. That much of the image is reality." "Can you help us?" pleaded Rhea. "The Druma, it's in trouble." The Grand Elusa pulled off another leg from the beetle. "Of course it is in trouble, like the rest of Finkyra. As much trouble as this poor beetle, being consumed bit by bit. Have you only just realized that?" Rhea hung her head. "I didn't want to believe it." "Until now, when the blight is practically at your door. You have waited too long." "I know, but maybe there's still time. Will you help?" The spider took another bite, chewed avidly. "Just what do you expect me to do?" "You could explain why it's happening." "Why?" More chewing. "It would take too long to tell you everything. I will run out of food, and then I'll have to eat all of you." "Just tell me if it can be stopped, by anything," then Rhea added with a glance in my direction. "Or anyone." The spider reached a leg up and scratched the hump of her hairy back. "I will tell you this. Finkyra, and that includes the Druma, is doomed, unless the king you call Stangmar can be toppled." "Toppled? Is that possible?" "It all depends," declared the spider, "on what Stangmar calls the last treasure, something he once had, then lost long ago." I looked down at my tunic, under which the Galator glowed. "Can you tell us its powers?" The spider considered the question for a while before answering. "The last treasure carries great powers, greater than you know." She grabbed another leg and bit off the bottom half. "Stangmar is convinced that when he finds it, his power will be complete." Rhea sighed. "He is right." "No, he is wrong. It is not his power that will be complete, but his servitude." "Servitude?" "To the most terrible spirit of all, the one known as Rita Gower." I stiffened. "To Rita Gower, your king is nothing but a tool for his greater goal." She nibbled on the beetle's knee, then gave a satisfied smack of her lips. "To dominate all of this world, the earth, and the other world, that is his true desire." She smacked her lips again, before crunching into the joint. "His supreme adversary, Dagda, is battling him on many fronts, too many to name. Yet Rita Gower has already won over Stangmar, and he has used the king to gain control of much of Finkyra. Few things now stand in his way. The most important of them is—" Another smack, another crunch. "The last treasure. If that too falls into his hands, he will certainly win Finkyra. Then Rita Gower will control the bridge between the earth and the other world. He will be within reach of winning the earth itself. Tough, but tasty, this leg, I mean. And if that ever happens, all is lost." Frowning, I tried to understand. Doesn't a king know he's being used in this way? He knows, but he was corrupted by Rita Gower long ago. She swallowed the last section of the last leg. Then she carefully wiped her mouth, using the 2 arms nearest to her head. Stangmar has lost the ability to choose for himself. Yet if he could be toppled somehow, Rita Gower might still be stopped. Perhaps. Rhea, looking discouraged, leaned against a wall of glowing crystals. But how? The Grandalusa bit into the beetle's belly. Tender as could be. How? Repeated Rhea. The spider swallowed. There is only one possibility left. No, it is not really a possibility at all. What is it? The king's castle must be destroyed. Rhea blinked. The shrouded castle? Yes, it is the creation of Rita Gower, and through its walls, the evil spirit's power flows into Stangmar and his army. The Ghouliants themselves are part of the castle they guard, you know. She took another bite of the belly. Very good. What was I saying? Oh yes, the Ghouliants. That is why they never venture outside the castle wall. If you can destroy the castle, you can also destroy them. It can't be done, exclaimed Rhea. The shrouded castle is always spinning, always dark. It would be impossible to attack, let alone destroy. There is a way. The spider, still chewing, turned toward me. Just as there is a way for a man who is blind to see again. I started. How did you know that? In the same way, you can see things with your second sight that others cannot see with their eyes. At that, I faced Rhea. The writing on the walls inside Arbassa. That's why it was invisible to you. And if you should survive, continued the Grandalusa, your second sight could improve further. One day, you might not only see, but understand. You mean it could help me read the writing? If you survive. Really? Do not underestimate your second sight. One day, you might come to rely on it, to love it. Maybe even more than you once loved your own eyes. She paused long enough to nibble on the beetle's forehead. Though I happen to love eyes myself. Rhea addressed the spider. You said there is a way. Using 3 of her arms, the white creature grasped the remainder of the beetle and ate some more of the belly. She chewed slowly, savoring its flavor. I may not have time to explain it to you. In fact, you ought to leave while you can. I will finish this morsel quite soon, and then, with my appetite, I'm afraid it will be your turn next. Again Shim groaned from behind his hand. What is the way? Do you know about the cauldron of death? Asked the spider, cleaning one of her arms. Grimly, Rhea nodded. Just that anyone who is thrown into it is killed instantly. True enough, but it is also true that it bears a fatal flaw. If someone were to crawl into it willingly, not by force, then the cauldron itself would be destroyed. Crawl into it willingly? Who would ever do such a thing? No one wants to live to see another day. The spider munched some more, lips smacking. Yet in the same manner, the castle itself has a flaw. A tiny one, perhaps, but a flaw nonetheless. What is it? There is an ancient prophecy, as ancient as the giants themselves. At this, Shim spread his fingers just wide enough to peek through. The spider swung to another strand, pulled free an old antenna that some victim had left behind, and gobbled it in one bite. Returning to the nearly eaten beetle, she chanted, Where in the darkness a castle doth spin, small will be large, ends will begin. Only when giants make dance in the hall, shall every barrier crumble and fall. What does it mean? Demanded Rhea. Only when giants make dance in the hall, shall every barrier crumble and fall. I pushed some black hairs back from my face. So the castle walls would crumble if giants ever danced there? Having finished off the beetle's belly, the spider tore off one of the wings. So goes the prophecy. Rhea's expression darkened. So that's why Stangmar have been hunting down all the giants. He must have heard this prophecy too. He's doing everything he can to make sure it never comes true. The spider crunched on the remainder of the wing, including destroying Varigol, the most ancient city of all. Oh, moaned Shim. It doesn't means it when I says I wishes to be big. I doesn't means it, really, truly, honestly. The Grandalusa eyed this shivering mass of dirt, twigs, and honey. I pity you, shrunken one, for though your parents came from the giant's race, you have not learned that bigness needs more than the size of your bones. But I is happy being small, just a foolish whim to get big and dead. I is happy you're small but alive." "So be it," said the spider. "Now I ought to warn all of you, this little morsel has only one wing left, and also part of the head." She pulled off the wing, crammed it into her mouth, and chewed for a few seconds. Now just the head. I am still very hungry, and also tired of being this size. If you do not leave my crystal cave quite soon, I will be forced to sample a few of your arms and legs." Rhea clutched my arm. "She's right, let's get out of here." "But how?" "I am not certain," the spider answered, "but I think you might be able to climb out on the crystals." "Of course!" exclaimed Rhea. "Let's go!" She began to scamper up the radiant wall, using the larger crystals as holds for her hands and feet. Shim pushed past her, scaling the steep wall as rapidly as his stubby arms and legs could manage. He left behind a trail of goopy syrup on the crystals. Seeing me standing beneath, Rhea called down, "Quick, or you'll follow that beetle!" I hesitated, driven to ask the Grandalusa one more thing. "Come on!" "Go ahead," I called back. I will be there right away." "You had better do just that." The spider reached for the beetle's head, leaving nothing but an empty noose of silk. "On the other hand, you do look scrawny but edible." "Please tell me one last thing," I begged. "About my home, my true home. Can you tell me where it is? The Galator, glowing right here. It is my only clue." "Ah, the Galator! Come closer and show it to me." "I don't dare. You might—" "My, but you do look more meaty than I thought." "Please!" I cried. "Then can you tell me how to find my mother, my father, my true name?" Swallowing the very last of the beetle, the spider answered, "I cannot say. That is for— I dare say you do smell unusually interesting. Come closer, boy, come closer. Yes, let me take a closer look." As the spider's voice swelled in size, so did the spider. But I did not stay to watch the change. I scurried out of the cave with all the speed I could muster. Okay, that was chapter 21. So tomorrow we'll read chapter 22 called Encounter in the Mist. Thank you for joining me. Have a good night.